computing devices. Digital navigation services include ongoing assistance with affordable internet access, device acquisition, and technical skills and application support. And these, especially I'll just say from my personal or Valley Vision's, experience, digital navigators really play a crucial role in the digital inclusion ecosystem. We'll often talk about the different legs of the digital inclusion stool, one being affordable internet access, having a device that you can work off of, having the digital skills. But digital navigators are really the glue, or the screws, I should say, and bringing all of that together and making it actually happen. Doing that one-on-one work with community members is so important. And so having these folks go out into the communities, kind of bridge that digital divide, especially, getting folks connected, building some of those digital skills, is so crucial to making this, forward momentum happen. So really excited to kind of shed light on this program. I know we've had some interest in it locally, and really excited to highlight the great programs going on across the country here. So without further ado, I will introduce you all to our wonderful digital navigator panel. We have with us here today Danielle Stephen, who is a community resilience director at MoHuman. We have Jerry Yamashita, who is an instructional technologist at Highlands Community Charter and Technical Schools. We have Carolyn Glada, who is a librarian for education and outreach with the Southeastern New York Library Resources Council, and also works with a team of Hudson Valley digital navigators. And we also have Abby Waldroop, who's a digital navigator manager here at the National Inclusion Alliance. So really, I wish we were in person so I could just give a big round of applause to all these folks for joining us today, but wanted to introduce you to our panel. And I think I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing our screen here. We have a few kind of preloaded panel questions that we want to make sure folks answer, but we'll also have time for some Q&A from the audience. So as we go through here, please feel free to drop any questions in the chat, anything you want to discuss. We will definitely have some time for that later on. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen, and shortly I think our panelists will be spotlighted, but I want to go ahead and pitch our first question. And I'm kind of looking over our panelists. Jerry, I'll throw this to you first, and our team will also throw this in the chat. If you could please introduce yourself and give an overview of your digital navigator program.
Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Jerry Yamashita, and thank you, Caitlin, for pronouncing it correctly. It's very, very rare. Yeah, so I'm, as you heard, I'm the instructional technologist at Highlands Community Charter and Technical Schools. We are an adult serving charter based in Sacramento, California. We have well over 5,000 students that attend our school, and it's growing every day. Really, I don't want to take up too much of this time on this introduction, but this is a program that we started back in April 2020, right after the pandemic started, and this was a partnership with the NDIA. So hi, Abby. That we were working in a working group to kind of address this problem of teachers and instructional staff, at least for me at our agency, that were spending a lot of time doing technical support and not very much time teaching. And we wanted to remove that barrier. And so I got involved in that. We came up with this national framework eventually. I find it's funny to look back now, because when we first started, we started calling it a digital caseworker, which is kind of weird to think about now. But it eventually turned into digital navigator, which sounds way cooler. Yeah, so by October 2020, I had gotten this thing off the ground with the help of our leadership at the school, and hired 6 digital navigators speaking different languages that our students speak. And that was really the big thing for us, was that we address the language barriers along with the technical barriers, so that we could remove that and get to the learning. And so that's really kind of the main background of our program. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you, Jerry. I love that. Caseworkers is I'm going to think about that. That's interesting. And I'll throw that same question over to Abby. You know, if you could introduce yourself and give us an overview of your Digital Navigator program.
Sure, thanks. I am Abby Waldrop, and I work at the National Digital Inclusion Alliance as the Digital Navigator Manager. And so all of my time is spent on this work, which is really interesting to think of, you know, hearing Jerry talk about the concept, how it was established and developed back in 2020 as a new idea, and now that's all I spend my time doing. It's interesting to think about that evolution. But at NDIA, our work is supporting, learning from, and elevating our community of digital inclusion practitioners and experts. And the Digital Navigator model is an example of that work. It was a model that was established and named by NDIA and developed by our community and early programs like Jerry's that got together and talked about what are our communities needing right now, how has our work changed, you know, early in the pandemic. And a lot of what we found, or what that group found, was that we needed to provide one-on-one support, building relationships, and repeated interactions, and be prepared to provide support in all areas of digital inclusion. Where a lot of previous work, different organizations would address certain pieces of digital inclusion, Digital Navigators sort of did all of that. So now at NDIA, we support Digital Navigator programs in a few different ways, and our goal is to foster continued growth and development of the model and to learn and share best practices from digital navigators all over the country. So one of the ways we do that is working closely with programs that contract with us to train their digital navigators. We work very closely with Carolyn's program, so I'm really excited to be on this panel with her and hear about the great work that she does and her digital navigators do. And we also continue to meet with our Digital Navigator Working Group, which is the group that started meeting to establish and develop this model, which has now grown to over 300 people who discuss best practices and emerging trends in digital navigators and continue to support one another. And it is always really mind-blowing and eye-opening every time we meet with that group. I learn so much from them. And we also have just launched our National Digital Navigator Core project, which is for rural and tribal communities. It's a grant program that's funded by Google.org to extend the model further into rural communities and into Indian country. And so there's 18 grantee organizations that we're working with directly to develop their digital navigator programs as well. So that's just launched, and we'll be doing that for the next 3 years. But broadly, we share as many resources as we are able to on our website. So I would definitely recommend checking that out. And it's going to be getting some major updates soon. And we invite folks to join our Digital Navigator Working Group if you're interested in learning from one another and connecting on this topic further.
Thank you, Abby. I grew up in a rural and tribal area. And so when that opportunity was announced, I was like shaking in my seat at the NDIA conference, like, oh my gosh, so exciting. But thank you. I'll pitch that question next to you, Danielle, if you could introduce yourself and give an overview of your Digital Navigator program over at MoHuman.
Yes. Hello, my name is Danielle Stephen. Excuse me. I'm in San Diego. I am the Community Resilience Director for MoHuman. I'm also the Economic Co-Chair for the Promise Zone for San Diego, and I'm a member of the United Nations Association for the San Diego chapter. And it all kind of makes sense for MoHuman because we were started prior to 2020, prior to the pandemic. We began in 2018. There's always been this huge gap with digital literacy in the country and all over the world. And I think 2020, I know 2020 and the pandemic really shed a light on that for other people. But we already saw that, and we were already addressing that. Our current Digital Navigator program has to do with community health educators. We are now, I don't know if I made up this word, we are evolutionizing community health educators into now digital navigators. And so we're expanding their knowledge on community health as well as digital literacy and making sure that they're able to then address these issues with the community that they're working directly with. You know, there's a lot that we're doing. I think at MoHuman, like Abby said, and like Jerry said, we definitely put the community first, and we do the community prior to tech skills. And one of the most important things for us also is cultural relevancy. We don't take digital navigators and place them into communities. We talk to the communities, we evaluate, we assess, and then we take people that they already trust and we make them into the digital navigators. We make sure that we're educating them, we're empowering them. And yeah, we're just here to strengthen community access, ensure community ownership, and spread the good of broadband to everyone.
Thank you so much, Danielle. And that's like so interesting, at least for me, myself personally, the kind of telehealth or health and digital inclusion side of things is what got me into this space in the first place. So I'm just so excited to hear about your program. It's really interesting seeing the linkages there. And I'll pose that same question to you, Carolyn. If you could introduce yourself and give us a little overview of your Digital Navigator program with the Hudson Valley.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me here. So I am the program manager for Digital Navigators of the Hudson Valley, and I work for Southeastern New York Library Resources Council, which is one of the 9 academic library councils in New York State. So if you're not familiar with New York geography, we are between Albany and New York City. So we're in that little pocket, and I'll drop a link in the chat. This is a directory of our digital navigators. So we got a grant. We have the ARPA grant was distributed through the state library, and the state librarian portioned it out into to the academic library councils for us to put towards digital inclusion work. So at our council, we coordinated with the 2 public library systems in our region. It's 8 counties in total, and decided to implement a digital navigator program. So we moved really quickly starting in January, because we only had until June at the time to spend the money, and mobilized ourselves and put out a call. And we had about 70 people respond to ask to sign up for the program. So we currently have about, I think, 72 active digital navigators. We had some money left over after the first training, so we were able to train a second cohort of people. And they are at 48 different institutions, mostly libraries, but we also have a couple of community-based organizations who are working as digital navigators. So we gave them 4 days of training, and then we set them up and set them free. And we meet on a regular basis with the navigators just to keep everybody informed of what everyone's doing. Abby set up a listserv for us so we can all communicate, because what makes our program a little bit unique is that these aren't our employees. These are like people who volunteered for the program. With the funds, we were able to pay them for their time, as long as they met some qualifications, like meeting with a set amount of clients within a certain amount of time, and then filling out forms every time they had an interaction. So far the program has been really, we had a significant, I don't have like the number on top of my head, but we had a lot of people. Most people who started the program completed the program through the time frame, and they decided to stay on even after the funding ran out. They decided to keep doing it as part of their work in their library or organization. So our grant right now goes until March. So the digital navigators are, since they're mostly librarians, they're doing the kind of like work that has been related to their library work, but it's sort of more of helping people navigate through the specific needs that they have, either around devices, often digital literacy, and occasionally getting broadband access in their homes. So we've been keeping track of all the interactions that they have. And we also provided them with marketing materials and like sort of like a regular branded thing. And part of the reason I connected here is that we are directly after this meeting, in fact, before this meeting even ends, we're going to have our first meeting to talk about a Hudson Valley coalition. So we might start enveloping that into a broader plan for the entire valley. So that's where we're coming from.
It's been so inspiring hearing about your efforts, Carolyn, especially because our coalition started off as a kind of relationship between the libraries and different groups. So interesting to see you start off with a digital navigated portion and then form the coalition. It's like inspiring for us. We might have to follow in your footsteps. Awesome. All right, I'm going to throw our second question out there, but before I do, I want to preface this. I know that folks are in different stages of development with their digital navigator program, so feel free to kind of flex your response to this question to however it works best for you. But can you answer, how do your programs identify and recruit navigators in the communities or for those communities? I know that's an essential part of it. And I think Danielle, I'll throw that question to you first.
Recruiting navigators, I think it just depends on the community itself. For us, we like to, or we look for the underserved or unserved. So being a community member myself, I make sure that I'm engaged with the community. You naturally come across people that have these abilities, these skills that you're looking for, that you can teach them all types of things as far as like digital literacy goes, but they have to be skilled in a certain personal type of way to connect with people. And so meeting them, talking to CBOs, community organizations, they have people that they want to meet with and people that they want trained as navigators. So I think there are so many opportunities to meet people and to train them as digital navigators, and then to just, disperse them around.
Thank you so much, Danielle. I'll pitch that same question over to you, Abby. How do you identify and recruit navigators in these different communities, especially for you all kind of going across the country shortly? I'm super curious about that.
Yeah, well, I want to echo something that Danielle said earlier, which is absolutely correct, that the best digital navigators are from the communities that they're serving. They're already members of that community, and so therefore they understand how to be culturally relevant to that community. They know where, the old grocery store was that closed. So when that navigation comes up, like they can discuss things that well on that level. And we always talk about, rather than seeking someone with really strong technical skills, which is kind of a tendency that people may have because it's the technical concepts kind of position, we really think that it's more important to find candidates who have empathy and can communicate with good humor in a language that the community members understand and creatively solve problems while providing excellent customer service. So those are kind of the qualities that need to be there. And then some of the technical things can be taught, which sometimes means that a digital navigator client could graduate to a digital navigator at some point. Someone who's learned recently some of the stuff is really well equipped to do this. Sometimes I think like in Carolyn's situation is a good example of kind of some internal recruitment, finding people on staff who just have these kind of aptitudes and are interested in this work already in the organization. That sometimes works well, especially in libraries. And so finding someone in a community that is going to be served is really a good way to start. And that sometimes means you need a big variety. And then also, I think you all have already covered this, because as Jerry said, having people who speak so many different languages is going to mean that you can serve more people that way.
Thank you, Abby. I think it was Carolyn who said to me once, we don't need someone who can work at the Apple Genius Bar. We need someone who can really sit and has the patience to walk someone through something, which I think was kind of eye-opening for me and so crucial. So I'll pitch that question to you, Carolyn. How do your programs identify and recruit navigators in your community?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And like what Abby said, empathy and patience are really two of the biggest qualities that you need, because when we first had people go out and have their visits with clients, we gave them forms that said, was it a 15-minute visit or a 30-minute visit or like 30 minutes or more? And so many people came back and said 30 minutes or more, that we're like, oh, that we need better data on that. So it's really, a lot of these visits are 45 minutes to an hour, and sometimes it is just a matter of like the onerous process of signing up for ID Me, or just like needing to have like the right information to get onto like remembering your passwords is like so many of these interactions are just these very simple things where a lot of the people who are meeting with just need to be empowered to know that they can do it, because they're feeling the barrier like of the intimidation of the smartphone or whatever device that they're coming in trying to figure out how to use. So when we had our application process, we didn't ask anybody if they had technical skills, because the technical skills are if you were working in, like, especially since we were mostly working with librarians, like they were there already. But we did ask people questions, and I recently sent these questions to the listserv, the Digital Navigator listserv, that were in our application. And it was basically, I have cultural competency, like we were talking about, excellent interpersonal skills, the ability to solve problems, the ability to stay positive. It's really more akin to being a social worker than it is a tech person, because you're a navigator is holding a person's hand and walking them through the problem. And sometimes the navigators are learning something in the process. Like, we've got a lot of responses like that. Like, I actually didn't know how an Android worked until I helped Deborah. And then, and now I know where these settings are in an Android. So the problems are not complex, but the solutions are life-changing. So if you have people that are good with working with people, you have the people that you need to be digital navigators.
Thank you. No, that's such helpful information, especially for folks looking to form their own program. And like, what should we be looking for when we're hiring? That's super helpful. Thank you. And I'll pitch this last but not least to you, Jerry. How does your program identify and recruit navigators in their communities?
Yeah, I think, well, first, I think I have to preface this a little bit by saying we're a little bit different because we are kind of, how would you say, like internal, right? We're not necessarily serving the community at large, although our students are part of the community that we're serving. So we're not out there to the public necessarily, but any student that wants to enroll has access to us. That being said, it is a huge deal to, I think, echo what everyone else is saying, to represent the community and the students that we're serving. We have over 70% English language learners at our school. And that encompasses, dozens of languages, but most the top languages would be Spanish, Russian, and Farsi, although that's getting a little bit more diverse by the day. There's more Vietnamese language speakers, and others that are coming in. So we want to make sure that our digital navigator core is representative and able to help these students who may not even be very literate in their native language. And so that's a huge thing. I would also say that I agree that it's not necessarily a super technical position, although those skills are needed. You can't be a beginner and try to teach beginners. This is a huge customer service job, in my opinion. That's really first. They need to have that patience. I heard that mentioned. Patience is key. The customer service, being kind, being understanding, being empathetic, all of these things, because other things can come along with that too. It's not just the technology, it's other life challenges that are happening at the same time. Our digital navigators are not just helping with the technology. A lot of times they're helping with, oh, well, what's stopping you from coming to school? What's the problem? There's transportation, there's childcare, all of these things that are getting profiled at the same time. So it's really a nice gateway to wraparound services if that's something else that your community organization is providing or has access to provide. One unique thing I think that we're doing is that when we introduced the position, I also wrote a whole career technical education program alongside it. And so our students have access. What we call it is a community digital navigator program. It's a CTE program that is based on the fundamentals of digital literacy. So they go through that class, and then they can enter this program where they learn how to become a digital navigator. We rely heavily on the North Star digital literacy assessment tools. They're fantastic online curriculum that they've been building, which also starting to come in different languages, which is very helpful. And also the Google Applied Digital Skills curriculum, which is fantastic, project-based learning. They get kind of authentic problems to solve. And it helps them kind of get into that mindset of dealing with challenges that might come up with technology or students' assignments or homework, whatever it may be, real life stuff. And then they're also able to serve 40 hours and more if they want to, optionally, as an intern in our digital learning lab where all of the digital navigators work. So they shadow a digital navigator. They are hands-on with onboarding students to technology. All of our students have access one-to-one to some sort of digital device and internet connectivity. So either they receive a Chromebook and a hotspot, or they receive a Samsung smartphone, and and that comes with unlimited Wi-Fi hotspot 5G, which is fantastic. We have a great partnership with T-Mobile and Samsung, so we're able to provide this service to our students as well at no cost. That being said, we're not just throwing those through their window when they drive through. They're coming into the lab and getting one-to-one support, getting that device, unboxing it. There's someone there. If they need someone to speak their language, they're there. They're helping them log into their Google Workspace account. They're on their email. They're accessing our proprietary learning applications, and really kind of getting immersed into the digital ecosystem that they are going to need to survive and thrive in this, kind of 21st century digital landscape, right? So, yeah, those folks, we've now hired, I believe, I want to say, gosh, 5 graduates from our high school graduates from our program. Most of them had gone through the Community Digital Navigator CTE program. So it's really fantastic. We're creating our own pipeline, basically. And the students really, really love it. They love learning all of the digital skills. They get their certificates and all that stuff. And it's really fun. And they're able to move along and help their fellow students, their families, and their communities.
Thank you, Jerry. And kind of on your note on North Star, and I saw some conversation about that in the chat, and I'll kind of give you all an insider's take since you're all joining us at our meeting today. Actually, our local workforce development boards, and SETA in particular, is moving forward by putting North Star into all job centers in our region. So that will be coming shortly, and I think that there will be training series, and I think Valley Vision, I'm sure, will have an opportunity to help connect folks with that. But just a quick plug, because I think it's such a great program, and thank you, Jerry, as well. I'm going to move into our third question here, which I think some of this we may have addressed in this past question, but maybe honing in a little bit more specifically. And maybe Carolyn, I'll pitch this to you first. Can you tell us more about the training program in particular for your digital navigators, and particularly, how they're being trained to work in the community? And I know we've talked a little bit about, some of that, cultural awareness and some of those different things, but so kind of interested in that training aspect and diving in a little bit deeper there.
Sure. And I mean, this part's fun because I get to just throw it right back to Abby, because we hired NDIA to do our training. So in the first round, it was, there were 4 days of training. We had 4 days in a row of an hour and a half each of just training on all of the aspects of what might come up, a little bit of going over the affordable connectivity program, and then going over forms, because everybody who goes through an interaction needs to fill out a form so that we can collect the data. And then when we ran a second cohort, we had thought far ahead enough to record the trainings from the first cohort. So with the second cohort people, they watched the recorded trainings, and then we hired NDIA again for some touch up and updating. So we had Abby and Lo come in for that to give the new cohort some updated information about digital navigator training. And then, like I said, we meet every 2 weeks with the group. So the people that haven't yet completed their requirements, they are required to go to those meetings, and then it's optional for people who've already been through the whole training process. And then, like I was saying before, so since our navigators, we don't have any employees here. We're a membership organization for libraries. So have any, like I say, I don't have a carrot or a stick for the navigators. Like, it is up to them, and everyone who signed up for a program, we did require that their director or executive director or boss, whoever was the executive in charge of their organization, signed off on the navigators being part of the program. So and then we paid the organization rather than the person. So it's up to them in wherever they're particularly working and the need of their library and their community, on basically how they're going to train to do the specific work. In our region, we don't have any big cities. We have small cities like Poughkeepsie and Beacon and Newburgh. They're not really a city, but then we have a lot of rural areas as well. So the need varies tremendously among all of the 48 different organizations. So we left it up to the navigators and their organization to decide exactly what they needed to do to meet the needs. But a lot of them, like I said, were already doing the work. Like, being a librarian, you're pretty much already there. This was really putting, and to answer one of the questions that came up in chat, nobody that's in the Digital Navigator program is doing that as their full job. Like the navigator who is in my home library, they have navigator hours, like 2 hours a week, that are set hours. But if somebody comes in and they have a smartphone and they're like, I don't know how to use this, and then it's not during Digital Navigator hours, that could still be a Digital Navigator interaction, but it's not just like during the official time. So everybody's doing that slightly differently, how they count a Digital Navigator interaction, but it is, it's added on to most people's duties as assigned.
Thank you, Carolyn. And especially, I think, since referencing Abby and NDIA's training, I'll pitch this to you, Abby. It's been just for the audience, but it's been so fun to see with this panel how folks are connected and all this kind of our digital inclusion like network here. So, but I'll pitch that question to you, Abby. Can you talk a little bit more about the training curriculum for digital navigators, especially, training folks on how to work in the community?
Sure. I think Carolyn gave a great answer, so maybe I should not have even shut up for this panel. I really appreciated everything our panelists have said here. But yeah, with our training that we typically provide, a few key pieces that I'll just add a little more information about. We start by training, well, maybe not start, but early in the training, we talk about data and research, and we guide the digital navigators in researching where they're going to work to see what the digital divide looks like right now, and where they're going to be able to see the impact of their work, and helps them set some goals and to understand the why they're doing what they're doing and what what they can do, really the possibility of the impact of their work. So that's one piece that we like to definitely include them in. We definitely do asset mapping and talk about the resources that are available. So the digital navigators are involved in discovering what's already going on in their community, how they can support the digital inclusion work that's already happening in their community, and guiding people to those, as well as those resources like North Star and the other online GCF Learn Free, some other online digital skills resources. And they have to be prepared to understand how all of those different resources will work for the different, I keep saying clients, we call them different things, patrons of a library, community members, but whoever they're working with, they need to understand how to tailor their support to that person. And that's a really big part of the training. And depending on who we're working with, librarians typically, or people who work in libraries, often have this skill of the reference interview, where you practice learning. Someone asks you one question, but what do they really need to get their question answered? And so that's part of what a digital navigator has to do, is to dig into a request or a person's goal and kind of break that into steps, and what are all the pieces they need. And sometimes that's really the way the digital navigators are able to address all those different parts of digital inclusion that Caitlin, you were referring to earlier. I liked the screws in the stool. That was a fun part of the metaphor I hadn't heard before. But for connectivity, devices, and skills, a lot of times people are asking for one of those, but the other two will support their goal. So if someone says, I want to learn how to work on a computer because I'm interested in jobs that are on computers, it might help them to have internet at home and get a device where they can practice that at home. So a digital navigator can kind of suggest all of those pieces. I will also just echo what Carolyn said, that digital navigators work really well when they can support each other and talk about what they're learning or what their needs are. So I think a cohort support is really helpful too.
Thank you, Abby. I know it's so interesting too, just that overlap of the work of librarians or folks working at library and some of those different services, and what those anchor institutions really help to support those folks. And thank you for appreciating my metaphor. I'm like into woodworking, so I'm glad someone gets like the screw and wood glue commentary. And I think Jerry, I'll pose the same question to you. And I know you touched on it a little bit earlier, but can you talk a little bit more? And I know this is especially, being in an educational entity, a little bit more about that training curriculum and how they're being trained to work in the community. And apologies too if this is a duplicate question.
Yeah, I don't think it's a duplicate question. I mean, I would say that there's two distinct kind of ways to get into the position. One is the traditional route, applying for the job that might be posted. Although we started off internally, and we were seeking out sort of some of the support staff and some of our instructional staff that might have the desire to work with technology and that sort of thing. So we were looking at like para-educators who might be more tech savvy. We were looking for those language skills for sure. So that's kind of internal. Then we have the student side, which is creating that pipeline, and that's where that curriculum is kind of built in. That doesn't have so much overlap, but now this has got me thinking a lot, because it might be beneficial for our outside hires to be going through something similar that our students are, although they might already know this stuff. So that would have to be an assessment kind of exercise to start with. So just kind of some thoughts off the top of my head there, but I would say that we don't really need to do a lot of training with working in the community because they're coming from the community, right? And so like, I'm not gonna know better than they do how to interact with their community and what the cultural norms are and the traditions and the nuance and all that kind of stuff. So I kind of leave that up to them for sure. I would say that some of the things that I do require though, that within a certain time period, pretty much 90 days, and then throughout the rest of the year, that they become Google for Education certified, because we're a Google Workspace organization. So they need to know the ins and outs of all of that stuff, because all of our technology really relies heavily on that. They're using Gmail, Calendar, Sheets, Slides, Docs, Google Classroom, in many cases. So that kind of ecosystem, they need to know that. And so that's part of it. And that comes with the curriculum. So we do different types of kind of, it's more like professional development. So yeah, I think that's really important. Now, the thing that's, I think, also unique for us is that we are providing all of the technology. Like I mentioned, we are not only providing kind of the traditional set of Chromebooks and hotspots, but we're also providing for certain students the Samsung Galaxy smartphones. And so that comes with a different set of skills, right? All of our digital navigators need to learn the Android system. They need to learn kind of the inherent things to that Samsung phone or that model. So we do trainings on that and learn kind of the ins and outs of those types of things. So it's a little bit more custom, I think, than more, it's a little bit more of a customized job than a generalist, if I could say that, because there are certain specific hardware, although we will always help a student if they brought in their own computer or something like that, but that's very rare. So that's kind of, I think, the way that we're a little bit different than most of the organizations out there, because we're not serving the general public, we're serving our student body.
Thank you so much. And I'll pose this question to you as well, Danielle, to talk about the curriculum or training curriculum for those digital navigators, especially training them to work in the community. And I know that yourself and Candace have been going back and forth a little bit in the chat, talking about the overlap between community health educators and digital navigators. So also want to open up, a space for that as well.
Yeah. So for us, we have lots of partners that are very important to our organization, and we create our own curriculum. We create our own assessments. So the most important thing is to have a baseline assessment for our digital navigators. And what we didn't mention that's very important is to pick digital navigators that are lifelong learners, because these are skills and things that are going to change continuously. So they'll always have to be learning new things. So they have to want to learn new things. They have to be interested and they have to be invested, because they are going to want to help people. So you want someone who's going to want to help others. So with that baseline assessment, from there, we have to tailor the curriculum to what people already know. Things that we know we're going to have to train them on is how to use MODAT, which is one of our own tools. And it's a resource that we use for our digital navigators, and they go to modat.org. It also has the asset mapping and places to show people how to get free or low cost computers in their area. And our organization offers free and low cost internet as well. So I was writing down. So we have the universities that we're using for our assessments and for our curriculum, and we're spreading that all out. And we have MODAT, and we're also teaching them digital skills, not just digital skills, but device skills, because a digital navigator that's coming in, they may not have a device themselves. And so that's something that we provide to them, and then we have to show them how to use it. And like Jerry said, then we have to set up, like a Gmail or an email for them to use. And the question Candace was asking, if there's a lot of overlap. So what's important also to realize is that digital navigation isn't like a end all be all. It is a pathway to something else. This is a pathway for equity across the board in all industries. So if you think of telehealth, there's doctors that aren't accepting patients until you've completed a telehealth appointment. How do you make a telehealth appointment? How do you go to it? How do you use Zoom? Like, how do you turn your camera on? Does your device have a camera? If they're trying to respond back to you and they're say, go to my chart, what is that? If they're telling me to go to my chart, but how am I even getting this communication to do that? So all of these skills are really intertwined at this point, and which is why broadband is now a social determinant of health. Like, we can't, it is a factor in how we're living our lives, the factor of how, healthy we are, how successful we are. We have to know all of these things at this point. And it's really unfortunate that not everyone is offered the opportunities to learn them, to have them. And that's with devices, that's with digital literacy, that's with internet, that's with everything. All of these are connected. They're all very important. And so I think one of the good things about us creating our own curriculum is that we can very quickly tailor it. We can very quickly alter it. We can very quickly expand it when we need to. And we make sure that we do that.
Thank you so much, Danielle. And yeah, that's such a great quote. It said, digital skills are the pathway to equity across the board. And that's, I think, really been a learning lesson for us. It's not just, digital inclusion or digital equity as its own kind of siloed issue. It impacts everything that we do, if that's healthcare, whether that's education, accessing vital services. No, such a great point. Thank you. And I want to move into before I move into our fourth question, I also want to thank you, Danielle, for the ability to plug our MODAT platform there. I think some of our coworkers have dropped the links in the chat there, but for anyone who is not yet aware, we've been working really closely with MoHuman and launched a MODAT portal based off of their portal, originally created in San Diego, and now we have our own in the capital region, which really is a kind of, I like to call it like a one-stop shop, although I don't know if that's the correct terminology for all kind of digital inclusion.
Yeah, sure.
I love that. I probably picked that up from college because we had a one-stop shop back when I was in college, but I like the, a simple, easy to use platform to, connect to resources, whether that's, a free or low cost computer, information on, affordable broadband services, digital skills, training, even workforce components. So thank you, Danielle, for allowing us to subtly plug that in there. And we've dropped some links in the chat as well.
It's part of our training. It really is.
Yeah. No, thank you. And appreciate you and the folks at MoHuman for all that you do. Okay, moving into our last couple questions here. And I'm seeing some questions pop up in the chat as well. Feel free, if folks have questions that come up, drop those in there. Our team is tracking that and we'll kind of bring that up as we move into kind of open Q&A. But our kind of, second to last question here, and this is, I'm really interested in learning about this. How does your organization either currently or plan to promote your digital navigator program in the communities you work in? So what is that kind of marketing or advertisement or getting that information out there that to folks that this exists, this can help you? And I'll pitch that to you, Abby, first. Although I know, across the nation, this is a hard question to answer, but yeah, curious to see.
Yeah, I can share a few things that we have heard commonly, have worked in many digital navigator programs. One thing to start with is if you're an organization that has traditionally provided one piece of digital inclusion, or you have a program to do that. For example, if you lend devices from your library, that's a good way to market a digital navigator program, because they can assist with not only that thing that you're providing. So if it's classes on digital skills and you need a little one-on-one assistance, or you're getting a device and you need a little more help on how to use that, but they can also add in those other pieces that you might also need. So starting with that kind of thing, or if there's a program like that in your community, even if it's not in your organization, that's a good place to do some kind of targeted outreach. Community events are great where people already are. And theoretically, if you have digital navigators who are part of the community, they know exactly where they need to set up a table, to meet people and start telling people about this. On location at trusted or commonly visited organizations, like an older adult center is a good place to meet people where they are going to be already and they are already comfortable. And offline methods are always really good, flyers, door knocking or door hangers or radio, because people who aren't online may not learn about your program online. That said, I know that social media is still great because people, that's a really good way to get into some communities. If you share something on Facebook, and maybe grandma is on Facebook or another family member, I shouldn't target just older adults, but that's what has come to mind. But family members may tell them, oh, I saw this on Facebook, it would be great for you. So those are just a few, but I'm sure that the other panelists have some good examples too.
Yeah, the power of social media is real. I'm up in like rural Northern California. We have like a little Facebook group for our town that's like anything relevant goes into that group and we get so much response from it. It's great to hear that. Jerry, I'll throw that same question to you. How do you promote your digital navigator program in some of the communities you work in?
Yeah, so again, we are, I think in general, as far as, our school goes, we started back in 2014, and I think there were, a handful of students. Now we're going to probably reach 7,000 students here shortly. And that's not because we've done major marketing campaigns or anything like that. It's really word of mouth because the students find value in it and they talk to their family, friends, and neighbors. And that's how we've grown organically. And there's a need out there. We know that there's, it's probably understated the number of folks out there that do not possess a U.S. high school diploma, because much of that is self-reported and or projected from certain data sources, but it's probably higher than what we know or what we think we know. And so there's no lack of opportunity to bring folks into the fold there. Now, that being said, the sites that we operate in, the communities that we serve, we're trying to grow our digital navigator presence at those sites. And so, for example, right now we have all of our digital navigators working at one location, specifically our main campus, which is located in the Del Paso Heights neighborhood of Sacramento. And then we'll send them out to different locations, certain days or certain times of the day. Probably going to shift more towards a more permanent solution to serve the offsite campuses more full-time, so that there's a presence there all the time. And I think that that's going to really grow the program, because then folks know that they have someone to count on, that they can go to there at that place anytime. All right. And we're probably approaching nearly 50 sites now, and so we have to think about growing the team as well, and navigating the scheduling and all that kind of stuff is really kind of complicated. But I guess as far as promoting that program, really it's just being present and letting folks know what we have to offer. One of the big draws, I think, is that we give instant access to technology. They don't have to check out a device. They don't have to borrow it or be on site, really. They can come and they get issued a device, whether that's the Chromebook or that's the Samsung Galaxy phone, and then they get to take that home and treat it like it's their own. And so that's really fantastic. And I think we have someone. Okay. Yeah, and so I think once, if you were, I can only imagine coming brand new to this country, and they say, hey, go to Highlands and go. They have phones for you and they have computers for you, and you go and it's real, it's true, and you walk away and you go, oh my gosh, I can't believe it. They helped me get on. They helped me learn how to turn it on and use it, and now I can talk to my teacher and I can look for a job and I can do all these things. You should go too. I mean, what better advertisement is that, right? And so I think that recruitment is built in and has been really good for us. So I hope that answers that question.
Yeah, thank you. Carolyn, I'll pitch that to you next. How have you been promoting your Digital Navigator program, throughout the area?
Thanks. I have an easy answer. I have to thank IMLS, the Institute of Museum and Library Science, for the grant. We were able to pay a marketing company to market our program. So they designed a logo for us and bookmarks and flyers and stand-up banners. And we distribute them to our organizations, and then they each kind of they even gave us social media posts that were pre-written and a press release that was pre-written. So we kind of set them free and told them to use them as they wanted to. And some of them went out into the community, like you all were talking about, and some of them just like at a food bank giveaways or school fairs or like community days, like just set out flyers and put bookmarks into bags and stuff like that. And then we built the website too, the one that I shared earlier. So that helps a lot. And then just keep putting it out there and putting it out there. And that's pretty much what that was a huge help, having a little bit of professional support instead of me having to reach the limits of what I can do in Canva on my own in my free time. It helped. So that was our primary thing. And then I built a little website so that everybody could download all the materials and find them in one spot and customize
and buttons,
them.
Carolyn, don't forget.
Actually, why didn't I take credit for the button? The button I actually did design. I made little buttons so that the digital navigators have a button that says "Ask Me," and it's funny I think some of the criticism we got was that our stuff was a little bit too wordy, because in our most recent discussion, people and I've seen a couple of people in the chat asking what is a digital navigator. The name isn't completely intuitive. So when people started advertising it as tech help, that resonated with people. So when the libraries put out, tech help on Wednesday, it didn't matter if it was branded as digital navigator or not. People knew I have tech, I need help, I'm coming in. And then they got a digital navigator appointment. But that's the main thing that resonated, was tech help.
Oh, that's a really good point, Carolyn. That means we'll have to bring back in Jerry's digital caseworker former naming convention. But no, that is a good point, and kind of like the advertisement or how we break down some of those naming conventions is good to keep in mind. And I'll throw that next to you, Danielle. How does MoHuman plan or currently your plan to promote your digital navigator program?
Well, the digital navigators kind of promote themselves. They're going out there and they're helping people. So people want to know more about them. People want to know what else they're doing. And also I like to say our superpowers. So one of our superpowers are just our partnerships and our relationships that we have with other organizations. So they want to promote what we're doing. They want to tell people about it. They want to be involved in it in any type of way. So what's really important to focus on for us, when we're in San Diego, we focus on the place-based organizations. We focus on the community-based organizations. We find people who are like-minded and people that are doers and they want to be with the community, in the community, and teach people there about what's going on. So it hasn't been difficult, I think, to promote or to, it's not, we're not selling anything. I feel like that makes it harder if you were. So it's where we're educating, and that resonates with lots of people. They all just want to know, like everyone wants to be in the know. So it's just, it's kind of organic in the way it happens.
No, thank you so much. And I agree with that. It's so like the work that speaks for itself, I think is so important, especially in these roles. Okay, we have our fifth final predetermined question, and it's a little bit wordy because I am the queen of like 4-part questions. My English teacher dad hates it, but I think these are 2 good ones. So we're going to drop these in the chat as well. But what barriers or key takeaways have you encountered while administering your program? Or do you have any tips or suggestions for communities looking to support or form their own digital navigator program? And instead of throwing the baseball at someone, I'm going to let that question sink in for a second and have panelists come forward and answer in their own time.
I've been thinking about it since you told me it was going to be a question. So one of the barriers that we've come across is the lack of trust. And the lack of trust is very warranted. I think we have to overcome historical harms that have happened and things that people now believe are too good to be true. And so we have to develop trust over time. And just like I said, overcome those barriers of the lack of trust based on things that people have experienced and things that others have already done to them. And so they're guarded. People are guarded. They have this really big need and they would love to do it, but they're scared to get help from anyone. So that lack of trust, I feel, is the biggest barrier that we have to overcome.
Yeah, I would love to jump in and add to that. My thought was similar. I think one of the most important things about digital navigators is that their clients need to feel at ease in order for this to be successful. And so there's a lot of different things that cause that to happen, so you need to have trust. You need to be not only a trusted individual who seems like you can be trustworthy, but also from an organization represented, any of the resources that you're putting forth need to feel like they can be trusted. That also, if you're reflective of the community that you're supporting, like that's also a big way to help someone feel at ease. If you're, working with someone who seems similar to you, if you feel like they can understand you, digital navigators have to be flexible in that way to make people feel at ease, because I think it was Jerry who mentioned, and I'm sure Danielle and Carolyn have seen this as well, that digital navigators don't just help with computers. We hear a lot of different stories about people's lives, and we work through a lot of different issues that have some connection, sometimes tenuous, to a form they may need to fill out online. And we need to have the time and space to allow people to share that information as they want to and support them in the ways that you can. And I heard a good phrase from the Columbus Metropolitan Library in their digital navigator program recently, so I have to give them credit. In Ohio, they said that they feel their clients need to feel there is an abundance of help, because sometimes these individuals, these community members, feel like they could use help, but somebody else probably needs more help, or maybe there's not enough time to really work through all the issues they need. Maybe they would make it too hard. If they have a lot of questions, it would be too hard to get through all of them. So just providing a space and a relationship where it feels like there's plenty of help. We've got all the time that you need. We can meet as many times as you need to, and we can work through all of these different parts of, your goals, is really the way that a digital navigator program can thrive.
I love that you said abundance of help, because sometimes some of our interactions, it's like I came in because I forgot my password, and those end up being the longest interactions. Like it opens up a rabbit hole of other issues that need to get solved along the way. And I think giving people the grace to know, like, that's okay. It could take a while, and I'm here to give you that time, helps a ton.
Yeah, I'd probably just offer up something that's kind of logistical in nature, and that is access doesn't mean opportunity, right? And so when we say, well, we're here and we're here to help. And even if there is an abundance of help, if that person, in our case, our student, lives across town and they're not at our site, they don't come to this site where we're based out of, then that's a barrier, right? And so we might not know that there are these other folks that need assistance, that are out there, because they're not walking through the door, and they're not coming because maybe they don't know about it because they're not there on site, or whatever the case may be. But I think that's one of the reasons why, kind of tying back into getting out into the community, is that we need to start going into those places, and making ourselves visible there, because it's not, we want to be equitable with not only our access to devices, but the opportunity to get the training and all that stuff. I mean, that's really the spirit of the three legs of the digital divide kind of stool, right? And if we're not providing that third leg, then we're not doing them a complete service. So I think that's the big thing, is access and the opportunity to get that support.
Well, thank you. Absolutely. Okay, we have about 10 minutes to pull some of our audience questions. I've been tracking them as we've been going through. And so I'm going to kind of just voice these. And if panelists, if there's one that speaks out to you, please step forward. But I'm not going to assign one to anyone in particular. One of our first ones was from Candace from Sac City College. From a researcher lens, what kinds of theoretical lenses are being used to frame this work, especially in the grants being written, as in, are they being written towards public health, towards social justice? And I know, Jerry, you kind of replied briefly and mentioned TAM applying, although I don't know that acronym. But curious if you want to expand on that, or if other folks want to talk about, especially in the grant writing part of this work, what is that angle towards?
Yeah, just for the folks that didn't catch that, I mean, that's more academic research, rather than kind of geared for grant writing or anything like that. But TAM stands for Technology Acceptance Model. And so you might, as a theoretical lens, you might want to look through to that to see whether the services that you're providing through the Digital Navigator program, or maybe the devices you're providing or whatever, is it effective? Are your clients, your students, your patrons, whatever, are they using the technology? Are they using it the way that they want to effectively? What are their perceptions? That sort of thing. So that's why I offered that up, just off the top of my head. I know that that's a popular, in my field, one of the more popular models to use to measure that kind of, and there's also self-efficacy too. You might want to look, at that kind of framework as well. But yeah, that's all. I mean, I don't want to, I'm not an expert on it, but I know that may be a direction you might want to look in.
For us, the short answer is yes. So when we're writing grants, we are looking, like I said, we're looking for those pathways. So yes, we will write under a health lens. Yes, we will write under a social justice lens. And it just depends. Are we focusing on an area that has been maybe redlined in some way? There's just lots of different things, and those are your focus, and that's what you have to do at that time. Also, we didn't do a takeaway, and I was thinking about that, and this has to do with it. So the advice that we have for people, if they want to do a program like this, is to find a partner with a similar outlook and a similar goal, or the same outlook and the same goal. You partner together, you write this grant together, and you do it all as a team. We're a very small staff, but we have a huge network. We have huge teams of people that we work with very consistently doing all of this work. And also, when you're doing your program, you have to make sure that it's sustainable and it's scalable.
Thank you, Danielle. Any other panelists want to touch on that? If not, we have some other great questions in the chat too. Okay, awesome. So moving forward, and I know, Carolyn, you touched on this as well, but This is from Paul Rosenblum. Can panelists speak to how these meaning digital navigator positions are either paid or volunteer positions? Also seems like the position can be a standalone role, or many different elements can be integrated into the role, such as, front desk, counselor, teacher, etc. Can you talk a little bit more about, volunteer versus paid, or what your programs look like?
Yeah, I don't know, Carolyn, if that was supposed to be your chance to talk more, but I'll say that we have seen such a variety. And that also goes for the previous question. I would say this is a very flexible model, and it has been adapted to fit a lot of different scenarios. So the answer is often, like Danielle said, yes, it's a lot of different ways. I will say about volunteers, it's really important that they are skilled and trained volunteers and committed volunteers, because, and this isn't just with volunteers, we've also seen other groups, maybe like interns that are younger who have a short term of service and maybe don't receive a lot of training, sometimes provide a lower level of service, I guess, so that excellent customer service level that we want to reach. And often these clients or community members that are receiving support have already had bad experiences with customer service from an ISP or others who have tried to show them how to use a device. And so they may shut down quickly if they are not feeling that abundance of help and support and skill from the person they're receiving help from. So it is important that it's good help that they're getting for this to be successful and consistent, that they will continue to be able to build a relationship with the same person, and that you can expect them to show up to your appointments, that sort of thing. The same kind of goes, a piece of that goes along with when it's a part of someone's job. It's really helpful if there's dedicated time, like this is me being a digital navigator, and this is me doing my other role at certain times, certain places. Although it is helpful, I think, to give digital navigator training to people who may be doing it as a part of their job, even if they aren't able to carve out time. There isn't funding for that. But if they have that mindset, maybe that will help them to support whoever they're working with a little bit better, like librarians or teachers who are helping somebody with a device. Then if they can say, oh, there's like an ACP discount, you can get the Affordable Connectivity Program at home, that might help you too. It can be helpful in different ways, but we also have seen just full-time digital navigators that are hired just to do this, or that their jobs transition to be full-time doing this sort of thing.
Yes, ours are paid as well. And like Abby just said, the designation is important because we pay everyone. We also have done that where we've paid a organization and they're paying the digital navigator. But when we write that contract out, we have already specified the amount that's going to go towards them, because it's not like an up in the air. You pay them what you think they should get. We already know what we think they should have, and so we want to make sure this is like fair, and we don't want to add to a already growing problem or already existing problem. And so I think we would just make sure that everything that we do is very like ethical in that way, where we've set aside this amount of money, each person is getting this thing as well as a device, and they're all it's always paid from us.
Yeah, that I would say building some sustainability into it will be helpful as well, since we just got the one-time grant. And we were able to pay such a significant amount of our navigators their one-time fee, and they had to have their interactions. And I do have to honestly say, since they have been paid, we don't see them as actively involved in the program as much. So it is nice to have an incentive. We are working on a way to get a more sustained funding model so that we could keep the program ongoing, and invite more people in and have them go through the training. But that being said, we don't have there's not like a relicensing. Like once you're a digital navigator, you're always a digital navigator. Like it doesn't expire. So if people went through the program and we're not seeing them actively, I mean, I will keep emailing them to see if they want to be listed on the website and things like that. But like we're not keeping track of the people who have completed the program, like to see like you have to complete these steps. Once we gave away the money, that was sort of the end of our relationship in that way.
Thank you. And apologies if I put you on the spot in the beginning there, Carolyn. I just was like, oh, we've touched on this earlier. And speaking of touching on things earlier, this is a question from Dr. Larry Ozarin. And I know we've talked about North Star a little bit earlier. So Larry asks, do the navigators get training assessing digital literacy? And if so, what resources do you use that others might adopt? And my kind of question here is there, other resources besides North Star that you all have been using or folks might recommend in addition to digital literacy training?
I mean, Abby, if you're not going to do it, and I think you are, I would totally.
I can't. I just feel like I'm talking too much.
No, but maybe you have the link handy with Lowe's most recent post that they were talking about yesterday.
Yeah, I'll put the link. You talk.
Okay. No, I mean, Lowe was just talking about not reinventing the wheel. And so they put together some resources on digital literacy skills that already exist. So you don't have to create a program from scratch on digital literacy.
Yeah, I will, on the assessment side, a different point that came to mind for me was that we have a skills assessment form on our website that's open for anyone to use and was developed by the working group early on. And it is based, I think, on the concept that if you can do what you want to do, then check. Like that's the skill level. There's not any kind of certification attached to that. And I think that's different for different kinds of organizations. So like North Star is very thorough. You do all these skills and you can get a certificate for that. So the skills assessment that we use helps kind of people realize the skills they already have and helps the digital navigator understand what they may already know how to do and what their goals are if they can reach that with the skills they have or what skills they may need. So questions like, how often do you check Facebook? Because maybe someone says, I don't know anything about using the internet, but they're on Facebook every single day. So like there's some transferable skills there and we can do a little confidence building right away. So it's based on those sorts of questions rather than proving skill assessment. I know North Star is one of the most common, I would say the most common skills assessment for digital literacy. And it's now available in Spanish.
Thank you so much. And thank you for providing that link as well. Excited to look through some of those resources. And you all have done this perfectly because I have one question left and we have 3 minutes. So I'm pleased to see this. This is from Marissa at the City of Fairfield. For digital navigators assisting individuals to sign up for the ACP, for folks who don't know, that's the Affordable Connectivity Plan, which provides a broadband discount, and we can drop a definition of that in the chat here. But for those navigators assisting individuals to sign up for ACP and other programs that have eligibility requirements, how are you addressing privacy or associated liability while also providing adequate information about what's needed to sign up, as in eligibility requirements?
You want to go ahead, Daniel?
Go ahead, Carolyn, go ahead.
Okay. No, this is the thing that came up in a couple of our meetings because it was uncomfortable. And it's in so many librarians, just it's not in their nature to ask any personal questions because privacy is so important. And the people weren't answering the question. So what they found was that you just present your client with what the requirements are for ACP and say, like, if you are in any of these, if this applies to you, then this is available. So what was happening is that a lot of the navigator interactions aren't doing real-time ACP signups. They're sending people off with the information, and they're taking them as far, like, this is the website you're going to go to, and these are the fields you're going to fill out, and if you're eligible, then you can go ahead and do that. But they weren't necessarily saying, hey, do you make X amount of money, or and some of them are easy because if it's in the school district, like if you're in a if you're in a zone, like if you're in the right area, then you might automatically qualify for ACP without having it tied to your personal information. But that was pretty much any interaction that we do is, as I mentioned that in chat before too, like the navigators aren't asking for personal information. They're giving you the tools to put your personal information in yourself when you either using library computers or your own device when you get home.
So for us, if I use our health literacy navigators as an example, they are place-based. So like Carolyn said, because they're place-based, where they are focused, their area of focus, everyone there is eligible for ACP. So it's easier conversation to have. The navigators are trained on ACP, how to fill it out and all that information. And then they go out there and they aren't necessarily typing it in, but it is done in real time where the person can type it in on the navigator's device, for them, or, with them. And so if they have questions in real time, they can ask them as they're doing it. You all know there's a little bit of issues with ACP as far as getting somebody using someone else's benefits, and then there's no way to get the back, and it's just a lot of stuff. So, it's a complicated issue by itself.
Thank you all.
Yeah. Sorry.
No, go ahead. No, go ahead, Abby.
Just one example comes to mind. I believe it's the Center for Digital Equity in Charlotte has their digital navigators complete some paperwork about privacy before they help people with ACP signups, which is kind of on the back end of it. It's a good example.
Thank you all. And this has been a very convenient plug because our December meeting will focus totally on the ACP. So just that's convenient. And I will also just throw out for some of our folks in the audience, especially folks located in the capital region, Valley Vision is working towards in October trying to locate a site, an ACP enrollment site. I think it's Saturday, October 22nd. So if anyone is interested in collaborating or potentially hosting a ACP enrollment site, we would be thrilled to plan and work on that with you. Without further ado, I wish we could give our panelists a non-cacophonous Zoom round of applause over here without bursting your eardrums. But thank you all so much for taking the time to join us today and really, giving us such a great insight on your programs. Every question that has come up or some of these answers, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad we're taking notes over here because I'm looking forward to marinating on this information for the next couple weeks. So without further ado, we have a couple things before we close out, but just wanted to say a huge thank you to our panelists for joining us, taking the time. I know we have some folks on the East Coast as well. And so taking time out of your afternoon to do so. So before we close out here today, I want to kind of continue some of this great momentum and talk to you all about Digital Inclusion Week, which is coming up very shortly. It is October 3rd through the 7th. And for anyone who has never heard of Digital Inclusion Week before, it is a national event, a week of awareness, recognition, and celebration of different organizations, different individuals who are working towards digital inclusion, kind of those powerhouse folks, and really a time to highlight and bring attention to this. A lot of times Digital Inclusion Week is used to bring legislators and policymakers into the fold to show them how important these issues are and kind of support some of those different policy decisions. So Valley Vision will be participating in the Digital Inclusion Week this year, as well as the coalition as a whole. And so we want to invite you all to be part of that. We are putting out an interest form. It's a very quick Google form. I think it's 3 questions. And we want to feature members of the coalition during Digital Inclusion Week on our social media. So we will have that link hyperlinked in this presentation. I think a member of our staff is also dropping it in the chat here. But please feel free to fill out that form. We would love to feature you during Digital Inclusion Week and show off some of the great work that we're doing in our community. And we will also be launching our own Digital Inclusion Week toolkit. So kind of, sending out some of those great pre-made tweets, different social media posts, captions, things like that, to bring awareness to the work that the coalition is doing and the work of our members. So stay tuned for our Digital Inclusion Week toolkit that will be coming out next week, and we'll also be sending it out again closer to Digital Inclusion Week. But really exciting stuff. I think NDIA is also part of Digital Inclusion Week, a big part, and we'll be putting out their own toolkit, and we'll be sure to share that out. Thanks, Abby, to you and your team for putting a lot of that together. And kind of one last thing I want to touch on here, our quarterly meeting next month, as I mentioned earlier, will focus on the Affordable Connectivity Program, which for anyone who is unfamiliar with it, provides a discount of up to $30 per household, or even more if you are in a tribal area, and a one-time device discount of $100, kind of additional supports available for tribal folks as well. But we'll be talking all about, what the program is, as well as what enrollment looks like in our region, how to boost some of that enrollment, how we can connect with different communities and different institutions throughout our region to really boost that enrollment. That's a big part of what Valley Vision and the coalition is working on, especially going into next year. So really excited to share more on that. We'll have some more exciting guest speakers to announce there as well. And we'll also be dropping a link to that in the chat. So you can go ahead and get it registered and on your calendar now. I know December can be somewhat of a busy month, so we tried to do it ahead of any holidays. But that's when our next quarterly meeting will be. And I am so excited to get you all out 5 minutes early, extra lunchtime. Please go make a sandwich, enjoy your afternoon. I hope folks have a lovely weekend and enjoy some of this fall weather. I provided some of our staff's contact information and also email addresses for our panelists here if there's anything additional folks want to reach out about, but can't thank you enough for joining us here today, especially our panelists. Thank you again. I know we have folks in different time zones. Abby's on her day off today coming in to join us. So huge thank you to folks dedicating your time and coming here today. I think our team will stick on if folks have any questions, but other than that, I will send you off to your Friday afternoon. So thank you again so much for joining.